The I'm Thankful Network, radio for inspiration, education, and collaboration. Show host and creator Sue Lundquist has the endless energy, compassion, and charisma to carry her mission. This mission of positive change and communication, while also creating a maintenance tool within a safe environment. Sue Lundquist and the other positive changing hosts for living a life of contribution. Weekly Monday through Friday, 9 to 10, or streaming live at imthankful.com.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Ishel Wisdom Radio with Shauna, home on the I'm Thankful Network. Ishel, as I always say in my introduction, is the Mayan cosmic mother. So my show focuses on that divine feminine wisdom or grandmother wisdom. And aspects of that are traditional foods, herbs, healing and healing modalities, Mama Earth, the blood mysteries of Maiden Mother Crone, and much more. And today I have a fabulous guest who has been here many times before, Dr. Tim Gerstmar. We're going to talk about vitamin D today, which is a good topic to be discussing as we come into these darker months. But first, I have a couple of announcements. I have a Reiki Level 1 and Level 2 class coming up that I'm going to be teaching, and that will be on Sunday, October 24th from 9 to 4:30. And lunch is included. It is a really wonderful class. For those of you who have maybe heard of Reiki or not sure what it is a really profound healing modality, and it comes out of the hands. It originates in Japan, and it's just beautiful. In fact, they are using it in some hospitals now in the New York area. I have a friend who had breast cancer a few years ago who, after her chemo treatments, was able to receive Reiki. And it's great stuff. You can use it on other people, you can use it on your children, your animals, and most importantly on yourself. So this is a wonderful class. You can check out my website, which has all the information, shaunahome.com, SHONAGHHOME.com. And the second piece is I have a fabulous workshop coming up in the Yucatan. There are still spaces available for that. That is in November, the 14th through the 21st. It's just a week. And it will be an immersion into the sacred feminine within the Mayan temples. And it will be led by myself and a very beautiful man who is a Mayan priest and shaman, Miguel Angel Vergara. And that is also, the information for that is on my website under the portion called Sacred Journeys. And really going to be a very intimate, really beautiful experience. So anyone who feels called to that, please check it out. Again, my website, www.shaunahome.com, SHONAGHHOME.com. Also, tonight, I have my Weston A. Price meeting at my house in Redmond. And that topic tonight is going to be bone broths. And we'll also be discussing healthy breakfast. So kind of two subjects that are real good for this time of the year with kids back to school and everyone wanting to really keep their immune system in great shape. So you can get more information on my website. And let's get to our guest today. Dr. Tim Gerstmar, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So we're going to talk about vitamin D, and I think this is a really important subject right now. And there's, I think there's a lot of conflicting information about this. And I just want to talk about all aspects of this because even it's put in our food, it's put in milk, but then there's a difference between, vitamin D2 and D3 and yada, yada. And then is the sun good for us or not? You and I both know what the answer to that is. But so let's just talk about the whole deal. And let's start first with deficiency because so many people are deficient, and particularly out here in the Pacific Northwest. It's a big issue.
Well, it really is. I run, at this time of year, I'm running blood work on all my patients to assess their levels of vitamin D because, unfortunately, because we all shed a tear, summer's coming to an end.
What summer?
There never was one.
And, we have a nice sunny day today, and as we'll talk about, one of the prime sources of vitamin D can be sunlight. But it has to do with the angle of the sun in the atmosphere, and without getting complicated about things, as we move into winter months, even if it's a sunny day and we went outside and we got a lot of exposure to sun, the sun is still not intense enough to make vitamin D anymore. So we're really coming to the very end of the period where we can actually make vitamin D from the sun anymore. So I'm testing all my patients, and I think every responsible doctor should be testing their patients to see if they're at reasonable levels. We know historically people would build up their vitamin D through the summer. They'd have a very high level of vitamin D now, and then it would decrease all through the winter, of course, because they weren't getting that exposure. And by the time spring hit and the sun was coming out again, they would kind of be bottoming out on their vitamin D to start building it up. We know from studies and from my experience in testing people that most people are coming into the winter with very low levels of vitamin D, and so they'll move from being barely sufficient now to completely and utterly deficient as the winter goes along. And so some of the issues with vitamin D deficiency, now classically everyone just thinks about bones, osteoporosis, and that kind of thing. But there's so much more involved in the literature on this. The scientific literature is exploding every day with more and more reports, references, and studies being done. So some of the issues we're looking at are cancer and cancer prevention, and the big three are breast, colon, and prostate cancer, which are, the biggest cancer killers in this country nowadays. So we're not talking small change when we talk about cancer. We're also talking about heart disease and strokes. Of course, heart disease is, depending on the statistic, the number 1 or number 2 killer in the United States. Again, so not talking about little things here. Hypertension or high blood pressure, a variety of autoimmune diseases. And of course, we know Seattle has the highest rate of multiple sclerosis in the nation.
Right.
And some of the early research was done showing that multiple sclerosis tied in very strongly with latitude. That is, the farther north you go, the more multiple sclerosis you get. And so one of the strong theories is that it has something to do with vitamin D, and we know that vitamin D plays a part in preventing autoimmune diseases from taking hold. Things like diabetes, things like depression. Lots of patients, this are our kind of fake summer that we had this year. A lot of patients are coming in saying, I can't take it. Like, we're going back into winter again. I'm depressed. Seen very clearly for some people, vitamin D is the key. When they take vitamin D, the depression goes away. When they don't take vitamin D, it comes back again. So it's not that clear cut for everyone, but definitely for some people, the seasonal affective disorder type people, as the sun starts to wane, vitamin D can be a huge piece in that. Also, chronic pain conditions, osteoporosis, like we've talked about or can talk about. Osteoarthritis, that's the wear and tear arthritis that a lot of people suffer from. Vitamin D is helpful there. Things like muscle weakness, muscle wasting, various birth defects.
Birth defects?
Right. So we'll talk about this in a second. Periodontal disease, so cavities. Vitamin D plays a big part in that. So in addition to brushing your teeth and flossing and getting your cleanings and everything, nutrition plays a huge part in maintaining healthy teeth. And anyone who's studied Weston A. Price's material at all saw what a huge impact nutrition made on cavities and gum and teeth disease. And then controversially, so this is very controversial, but some people are putting forward that vitamin D plays a part in autism. And we've seen anecdotally, at least for some kids, really getting their vitamin D up has dramatically improved their autistic conditions. So it's not just about bones and bone health. And in fact, in the alternative medicine field, there's a lot of fads. So if you type alternative medicine into the internet, hey, you'll pop up with probably 10 or 20 of those fads right now. All you have to do is take this pill or this tea or this magic thing, and, you'll never age, and rainbows will come out of your mouth when you open it, and the world will be fantastic. And 99% of those things or more are really fads. And it's not saying there's not benefit to them, but they're not the be-all, end-all magic thing. The closest thing I've ever seen to a be-all, end-all magic thing is vitamin D. It's cheap, it's easy to take, and it affects every cell in your body. So that's just a few of the things that have been tied in the literature. So this is not some wacky conspiracy theory or whatever. You can go to the scientific literature, PubMed or Google Scholar, and type in vitamin D in any of these conditions, and you'll pull up papers on it and see, that the data is beginning to accumulate.
Okay.
So that's some of the vitamin D deficiencies.
Okay. Let's talk about when was it discovered even that this was good, that vitamin D was a factor in all this. And
Sure. So a little bit of background just so people get a sense. So when we first started to think there might be an issue was back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when rickets became a really big deal. So people were moving from the country into the city to start working in factories. They were burning so much coal in the cities that the skies were black with big, clouds of pollution and everything. And people were getting up at, 4 a.m, going to the factory, leaving at 10 at night, and weren't getting any sunlight, really poor quality food. And they noticed the children were actually having bone softening. So kids, when they're born, have obviously pretty soft bones, so they can be delivered properly. But then those bones need to harden up so that we can walk around and live our lives. But they found in these kids, the bones were actually so soft that when they started walking around, they got bow-legged. The bones actually bent. And it was a condition called rickets, and they had no idea what it was. So it took them a few years, and 1921 was when they actually discovered vitamin D. And what they found was they could take dogs and give them the same rickets that kids were suffering from. And they found that cod liver oil prevented rickets, and they didn't know why, and they thought, maybe it's the vitamin. They discovered vitamin A, the first vitamin that was discovered, and maybe that was it. And they found out, no, actually, when they destroyed the vitamin A, they still got the benefit. And so they isolated this other compound, and they called it vitamin D because it was the fourth vitamin discovered.
We're going to stop there because I want to hear more, but we need to take a break. You're listening to Eashell Wisdom Radio with Shauna Home on the I'm Thankful Network, and we're talking with Dr. Tim Gerstmar today about vitamin D. See you in a bit.
Sunshine on my shoulders makes me happy.
Dr. Tim Gerstmar, ND, of Aspire Natural Health in downtown Redmond, is not your average naturopathic doctor. Dr. Gerstmar provides his patients with competent and compassionate health care, which emphasizes disease prevention and high-level wellness. Restoration of health and balance is the goal in Dr. Gerstmar's practice. Patients receive a level of personal attention at each appointment that is unheard of in today's medical practices. Initial appointments run for 90 minutes, enabling Dr. Gerstmar to treat the whole patient, body, mind, and spirit. Schooled in the knowledge of real food and its healing effects on the body, Dr. Gerstmar endeavors to discover the cause of what's ailing his patients and correct the imbalance, incorporating healing foods in addition to blending traditional healing techniques along with the latest diagnostics and treatments of modern medicine. Check out his website, aspirenaturalhealth.com, or call for an appointment at 425-202-7849. Hi, I'm Shauna Home, host of Eashell Wisdom on the I'm Thankful Network, Wednesdays live from 9 till 10 a.m. My book, Eashell Wisdom, 7 Teachings from the Mayan Sacred Feminine, is a love letter to women. Eashell is the Mayan cosmic mother, and her messages in this book encourage women to open to their true beauty through simple rituals of self-love and self-care. Wise woman author Susan Weed says of this book, quote, "If you dare to read it, you will be swept up in an astonishing inner adventure that will empower you deeply. The words of the grandmother's song echo in Shauna's words," end quote. This is a beautiful book to gift yourself and the women you love. It's available on Amazon.com and my website, www.shaunahome.com, SHONAGHHOME.com. The Weston A. Price Foundation was created to put forth the research of Dr. Price, whose meticulous study of healthy cultures around the world has given us a foundation for traditional foods that promote vibrant health. The foundation is dedicated to restoring nutrient-dense foods to the human diet through education, research, and activism. The Weston A. Price Foundation supports organic and biodynamic farming, pasture feeding of livestock, community-supported farms, honest and informative labeling, and prepared parenting and nurturing therapies. You can join a local Weston A. Price chapter to attend monthly meetings and learn about these healing foods and practices. Creating community around healing foods is what Weston Price is all about. Check out their website, www.westonprice.com, www.westonprice.org. It's a virtual encyclopedia of information. Join the foundation and receive their stunning quarterly journal, Wise Traditions.
Sunshine on the water looks so lovely.
Okay, my engineer, Benny, rocks. Okay, that's like the best.
I don't rock like John Denver rocks, but I mean, come on now.
This is that's very funny. But that's just a great.
Oh, you just got that. Okay.
Well, we are talking about vitamin D today. So we've got Dr. Tim Gerstmar here. And his website, by the way, is aspirenaturalhealth.com. He is a naturopath in downtown Redmond, and he is my doctor and my children's doctor, and a lot of my friends go to him, and he's fantastic. He's like not your normal doctor by any stretch of the imagination, and very, very highly researched. He's a voracious, like obsessive researcher like myself, so I have found a kindred spirit. So we're talking about vitamin D. We're talking about deficiency, starting with that. And we're going into just a little bit of history around the vitamin D. And we're talking about the big cities, people leaving the country, coming in, working in the factories, burning a lot of coal. Yeah.
Right, not getting any sunshine,
Right.
eating low-quality diets. Their kids got rickets where their bones softened. They never properly hardened, and then they developed these permanent deformities in their legs and lots of health problems and on and on. And so they were trying to, scientists of the day were trying to find out what's going on. They eventually isolated a substance from cod liver oil they called vitamin D. The reason it's called vitamin D, people ask, is because it was the fourth vitamin-like substance discovered. So the first one was vitamin A, the second one was vitamin B,
and
the
C.
third one was vitamin C, and then the fourth one was vitamin D. So
Okay.
that's as simple as why do they call it vitamin D? Because it was the fourth vitamin discovered. But they made a mistake. It's not a vitamin. So vitamin D is called a vitamin. It's sold as a vitamin. It's not a vitamin. Okay? It's actually a hormone. It goes way beyond vitamins, are catalysts in reaction. So your body needs them to make a reaction go forward. But vitamin D more resembles a hormone like estrogen or testosterone or one of these guys in its chemical structure and also in its function. So that's how they discovered vitamin D, and that's all they thought it did at first was prevent rickets. So they found that, 200 units of vitamin D given to kids and adults meant they didn't get rickets. And they thought that's all it did. So for years and years, there's never been any thought to, does it do anything else? Might you need more to do some of the other things that it does? Because 200 units does work very, very well in preventing rickets. And I'll have to say, unfortunately, we're starting to see rickets come back now. In African-American children that live in the inner cities, they're starting to see rickets again. So it absolutely horrific that we have that. It would be like seeing scurvy popping up again,
Right.
But it's happening. So that led to the government recommendation. So as they currently stand, although there's some talk about changing them, they're recommending now that babies get 400 units. But what I saw is from birth to age 50, it's 200 units a day.
It's shocking.
We'll mention why I think it's absolutely ridiculously low. It'd be like taking a tenth of an aspirin and saying, man, this does nothing. Well, yeah, because you need an appropriate dose to have an effect. From age 51 to 70, they say 400 units a day. From 71 and over, it's 600 units a day. So, like I said, that'll prevent rickets, but it won't do any of this other stuff. This helping to prevent cancer, this helping to prevent heart disease and diabetes. And one I forgot to mention was inflammatory bowel disease. So that's Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. Again, autoimmune. Any autoimmune disease thus far has been shown to be helpful. We'll mention a couple of the instances where vitamin D could be harmful as we go along here. But so that led us to the current recommendations. And that'll lead us to testing. So testing is pretty simple. It's a blood test. You should be able to get it for about $60, if nothing else, if your insurance won't cover it. But any doctor can order this. So your MD, your DO, your naturopathic doctor, your whatever. If they have the ability to order blood tests, they have the ability to order vitamin D.
Okay.
And so let's talk briefly about that. MDs are getting better and better about ordering, but some, unfortunately, are still kind of clueless that this might be an issue. There are actually 2 different tests you can run for vitamin D. So in order to have these make sense, I have to very quickly talk about how vitamin D is made.
Okay.
And so we have a substance in our skin, and I won't go into all the names, the pre-vitamin D that's put into our skin, and when sunlight shines on it, it changes it, and it becomes provitamin D, or it's almost vitamin D at that point. Then it goes to the liver and gets modified, and then it goes out to the cells of the body and the kidneys and gets modified again. So after it's been to the liver, it's this substance called 25-hydroxyvitamin D.
Okay.
Try not to get into huge names here. That's one of the tests that can be done. Then it goes to the liver, it goes to the kidneys and the other cells of the body and gets changed again and becomes 1,25 hydroxyvitamin D. So there's 25 hydroxyvitamin D, and then there's a completely different substance called 1,25 hydroxyvitamin D.
Okay.
So medical doctors who aren't in the know about vitamin D are used to watching 1,25 hydroxyvitamin D, because if you go into kidney failure, you have other very serious health ailments, that value can go off and the amount of calcium in your blood can change, and you can potentially die from it. So that's kind of a life-threatening condition that medical doctors are on the lookout for.
Sure.
But they don't haven't in the past, this is changing thankfully, haven't commonly measured the 25 vitamin D, which is your body's storage hormone of your vitamin D.
And is that also like what you would get from the sun, from being out in the sunshine? Is this one you were talking about that's in the skin?
Well, without going into too much biochemistry here, because I don't want to put people to sleep, your body puts the raw material into your skin, which then gets activated by the sun, which then goes to the liver and makes the 25. If you're taking vitamin D supplements, you're taking the 25 hydroxyvitamin D.
Okay.
So some MDs are still measuring the 1,25 vitamin D. And that doesn't tell you how much vitamin D you have in your system, because it's so critically important. Because if you don't have that 125 vitamin D, you don't have calcium in your blood and your heart can't beat and you die.
Right.
Your body does absolutely everything it can to keep that 125 vitamin D normal. So you can have basically virtually no 25 vitamin D, the storage form made by your liver. You can have basically none of that in your body, and your body desperately takes every last little scrap of it can find to turn into that 125 so it can keep your calcium normal in your blood. That's how awesome the body is.
Okay.
So that can be normal. So patients will come in and say, hey, I want my vitamin D level tested. And some doctors still test that 125 and they say, oh, look, it's normal. You're fine. No problem. And people think, oh, great. My vitamin D is normal.
Right. And their actual stores of vitamin D have not been addressed.
Right.
Via that test.
Not at all.
Okay.
And so what we're learning is we've thought in the past it was all about the 125 made by the kidneys. And that keeps your calcium normal in your blood. And that's all vitamin D does.
Yeah.
And we only learned not too long ago, in the past, I believe 10 or 15 years, that actually a whole bunch of basically all the other tissues of the body also can make that 125 themselves. But they make it in the tissue to be used in the tissue. So if you take blood, you never see it, because it's made right in that lung tissue or in that skin tissue or in the immune cells themselves, who then use it up right away. And so it can't be measured in the blood. So we didn't actually realize that it was happening until we've gotten more sensitive tools to measure this kind of thing. We never realized that was happening. So 125 is critically important, but it's not well measured. And the easiest thing to do is measure this 25 hydroxyvitamin D. So that's the test you need to go to your doctor and get measured.
So it's called 25
hydroxyvitamin
vitamin D. Okay.
Right. So, or, Yeah, that's the easiest way. And if people are confused, happy to post up that on my Facebook page so that people can look at it later today. So people understand. Test usually runs about $60. Insurance covers it, so not a big deal. And most MDs are becoming willing to prescribe, to run the test for you now if you ask for it. If your doctor isn't, you should find a new doctor because your doctor's not paying attention to the scientific literature and what's going on in clinical practice. I'm sorry, it's just kind of unconscionable now not to be checking people's vitamin D.
And when you get the test results back, it's a score between 0 and 100, correct?
Right. So this is the other place of disagreement. The medical community right now, depending on who you ask, is generally looking at a level of 30 or so as being fine. If you're less than 30, you're deficient, you need to take some. If you're more than 30, you're fine.
Out of 100.
Right. Well,
Okay,
right.
yeah.
Right. We'll talk in just one second. And I disagree with that. The scientific studies show that the tissues don't become full of vitamin D until your levels hit 50. So 30 is better than less than 30. And we're seeing a lot of people that are, 20s, 10s, so frankly deficient in vitamin D. And 30 is great, but the tissues don't get full until 50.
Okay.
And we know lifeguards who spend all their time on the beach and have a beautiful tan, most of them, or people who live on the equator, indigenous peoples and everything. There's a little controversy about this right now, but we're usually seeing levels in the 60s and 70s in those kind of people. And so right now, I'm recommending people get their levels up around 60 in the 60 to 80 range.
Okay.
So far more than most medical doctors are recommending right now.
Okay. All right. Good to know. We are going to take a break. You're listening to eShell Wisdom Radio with Shauna Home on the I'm Thankful Network with my guest, Dr. Tim Gerstmar of AspireNaturalHealth.com. If you are ready to change your life in a truly profound way, then I invite you to meet Elisa Silling, founder of Awake in Joy. Elisa is a gifted healing practitioner here in the Seattle area. She is a life coach, hypnotherapist, and spiritual guide. Elisa can induct you into your highest potential, helping you to overcome personal limitations, fears, anxiety, and stress. Working with Elisa, you will align with your life's purpose. Clients have experienced greater clarity and a sense of personal empowerment that has helped them create abundance on every level. Awake in Joy offers personal healing sessions, classes, and retreats. Sessions may be in person or by phone. Are you ready for a personal transformation? Check out Elisa's website, www.awakeenjoy.com. Hi, I'm Shauna Home, host of eShell Wisdom on the I'm Thankful Network, Wednesdays live from 9 till 10 a.m. My book, eShell Wisdom, 7 Teachings from the Mayan Sacred Feminine, is a love letter to women. eShell is the Mayan cosmic mother, and her messages in this book encourage women to open to their true beauty through simple rituals of self-love and self-care. Wise woman author Susan Weed says of this book, quote, "If you dare to read it, you will be swept up in an astonishing inner adventure that will empower you deeply. The words of the grandmother's song echo in Shauna's words." End quote. This is a beautiful book to gift yourself and the women you love. It's available on Amazon.com and my website, www.shaunahome.com, ShonaghHome.com. If you're thinking of doing a cleanse to restore health to your digestive system and bring your body back to balance, you need to check out European Rejuvenation Center in Factoria. European Rejuvenation Center is the place to go for colon hydrotherapy, endermology, and Swedish massage. They offer the Libby system for colon hydrotherapy, which is more effective than regular colonics for removing unwanted waste from the gut and assisting your body to return itself to a state of balance. Endermology originated in France and works directly to help remove cellulite. In addition, it stimulates lymphatic flow, helping the body to remove toxins. Swedish Massage promotes relaxation and well-being. Owner Selena Lewandowski is knowledgeable and compassionate. Selena will assist you in your goals to bring your body back to balance. Mention this ad and receive $20 off your first appointment. Call 206-271-0041 or check out their website, EuropeanRejuvenationCenter.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to eShell Wisdom Radio with Shauna Home. We are here today with my guest, Dr. Tim Gerstmar, who's a fabulous naturopath, and we're talking about vitamin D today. And we were just talking about the government recommendations, which are just ridiculous, which doesn't come as a surprise. And now we're going to talk about the realistic recommendations for vitamin D dosage. And well, I'll let Dr. Gerstmar talk about this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So just to finish up on the testing. So, testing is important. Vitamin D is incredibly, incredibly helpful. The nearest thing I've seen to a miracle in a pill, and I don't use that lightly. Like, there's just so many things it affects. We know that vitamin D actually goes into the nucleus of the cell where all the DNA is, and it plays a really big part in either turning on or off, at last count, 2,700 different genes. So it affects literally the genetic expression of the body in tremendously positive ways. But it can hurt you. So,
like anything, obviously.
Like
you
anything.
Overdo anything.
Right. Absolutely. You can overdo it. And so there's been a big fear in the medical community. Back in the 30s, they were playing with vitamin D and using absolutely massive, massive doses, hundreds of thousands and millions of units at a time in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis and some other things. And they were finding good results, but they made people sick. And they might have killed a few people. The literature is a little unclear. And it might have, and so then they scared themselves and it became, oh my God, vitamin D could be really dangerous. It's absolutely critical you don't take too much. Because like we said, that 125 hydroxy vitamin D made by the kidneys keeps calcium in our blood. And if we don't have calcium, our heart won't work and we die. So it's critical. But if we have way too much vitamin D, we start getting way too much calcium in our blood. And that can also cause severe problems as well. So it can cause heart problems. It can cause the inside of our blood vessels to harden up like a bone. It can lead to a lot of, it can make people really sick, and people can potentially die if you pushed it hard enough with vitamin D. But just because, drinking 5 gallons of water at one time can kill you, as we saw back a few years ago, they were making a big deal out of water intoxication and a handful of people who, very unfortunately, died from drinking way too much water. It doesn't mean that, drinking a reasonable amount of water is not good. And that's with vitamin D. Just because you can become toxic with vitamin D if you overdo it doesn't mean that you shouldn't take an appropriate dose of vitamin D.
Obviously. And so how many IUs of vitamin D is too much?
Right. So
it's actually a lot.
Right. So we know that the average adult is being recommended 200 to 400 IUs, called international units. It's just a measure of how much vitamin D is there per day. Now, how much is too much? For the average person, more than 10,000 units, IUs, of vitamin D is typically too much, although it varies depending on how much is in your blood and how you respond to it. So we're seeing a lot of difference in how people respond to vitamin D. And right now, the science is just not there. We know we're starting to understand that there are differences. People have differences in the receptors that have to do with vitamin D, called vitamin D polymorphisms, that affect the way people take in vitamin D. So I'll just say in my practice, seeing most people need at least 5,000
5,000
right,
IUs.
So about 20 20 times the 200 IUs that are being recommended to adults to get sufficient blood levels. Okay. Now, some people come in, they take 2,000 units, and their levels come up. We're monitoring them via blood test. Their levels come up really nicely. Other people, you put them on 2,000 or 5,000, their levels don't improve. You need to crank them up to 10,000, and a few patients were taking more than 10,000, but of course we're being sensible. We're monitoring them, making sure they're not getting into that toxic or dangerous zone. So, I really do recommend people follow up with a knowledgeable health practitioner who can run the blood test, because listen, let's get you to the level you need where you're getting the most benefit. If you're not going to do that, if you can't, or for whatever reason you're not willing to see a doctor and get tested, you don't have that option. If we're being really safe and really cautious, 2,000 units a day. If you want to live a little bit more on the wild side, where the vast majority of people are not going to have any problems, it's 5,000 units a day.
And then what about sunshine?
Sure.
And granted, we're coming into fall, we're not getting much of that. But in the summertime, because I think also part of this vitamin D deficiency is all the sunscreen that people are slathering on their body, which prevents the sun from actually penetrating and making this vitamin D. And the skin cancer they're finding is caused by all these nasty chemicals that are in the sunscreens that are not monitored.
Let me digress for just one second. So there are a couple of diseases that mean that you have to monitor very closely with vitamin D. So just a couple, they're uncommon, but if you have one of these diseases, you really need to be under a doctor's care when you're getting your vitamin D levels checked. And those are things like sarcoidosis. It's a type of disease. I won't go into it. It gets a little complicated. So if you have sarcoidosis, if you have certain types of lymphoma, so certain types of blood cancers, certain lymphomas, not all lymphomas, but certain ones, if you have tuberculosis, or a handful of these very uncommon diseases, if you have one of these diseases, you need to be under the care of a doctor, because these diseases uncouple that 25 to 125 conversion, and they will just there's no negative feedback, and so they'll just, the more 25 hydroxy vitamin D you put in the system, the more they crank out 125. And so that's a case where your doctor actually needs to be monitoring both your 25 and your 125. And most of those people, you have to be very cautious, and you can't ever get them up into that nice 50, 60, 70, 80 range of vitamin D, because their body will just make far too much of the 125. So if you have one of those diseases, be really cautious. Even 2,000 units is probably too much for you. You might, 1,000 units, or even, more in that 400 to 500 unit range is probably more sensible for you. Really get seen by a doctor.
But then for the rest of us, 5,000 IUs, 2 to 5.
2 to 5, right. And a little bit, if you're a man, 180 pounds, you're probably going to need that 5,000 to 6,000 units. If you're a really slender 100-pound woman, you're probably going to need more of those 2,000 units. So, but it varies, and people respond differently, and we think it has to do, again, with these genetic differences in the vitamin D receptors. We're understanding now that chronic infections play a big piece. Some of the research I was just doing showed that some bacteria and also some cancer cells will put out an enzyme called nagalase, which inhibits macrophages, which are a type of white blood cell, a type of a defender of our system. It inhibits them turning vitamin D on. And when they can't turn vitamin D on, they can't become active, and they can't do their job properly. And so a fascinating field of research about how chronic infections have a piece to play in this. And then yet a third piece is seemingly grain consumption. And I haven't looked into this tremendously, but but some of the data shows, at least in animals, rats and stuff aren't people, but at least in rats, you can create a vitamin D deficiency with grain feeding them. And so we know the majority of what most people are eating nowadays are grains and poorly processed and rancid and nutrient deficient grains at that,
and genetically modified, and all of that.
So 2,000 to 5,000 for the vast majority of people. If you know you have health problems or you know you have sarcoidosis, lymphomas,
work with your doctor.
Tuberculosis, work with your doctor. So let's talk about forms of vitamin D real fast, then we'll get into sunshine. So this segues really nicely. So most medical doctors are still recommending the prescription form of vitamin D. So if you're low, you can take this prescription form. You take 50,000 IU a week for 4 to 6, 8 weeks, and there you go. So this is a prescription form of vitamin D. It's actually vitamin D2 as opposed to vitamin D3. Vitamin D2 is made by exposing mushrooms to ultraviolet light. So they irradiate mushrooms, not with gamma radiation, but they expose them to ultraviolet light, and the oils in the mushrooms become vitamin D2. Okay. Animals, including human beings, when the ultraviolet light from sunshine strikes our skin, make vitamin D3. So they are similar molecules, but they're not the same.
Right. So why would you give someone vitamin D2?
Well, vitamin D2 is not naturally occurring in the human body. Okay. So you may get a little bit if you eat mushrooms or some other plant foods. You may get tiny amounts of vitamin D2.
But for the most part, it's the D3 that we want.
Right.
Because they were also putting D2 in pasteurized milk.
Well,
right?
So pretty much any vitamin D fortified food, which is pasteurized milk, which is some other foods, is D2. Okay. Right? Now, the studies are a little equivocal. Some say vitamin D2 works fine. Some say maybe not. My thought is if our bodies naturally make D3, not D2, why don't we stick with what our bodies naturally make?
One would think that's common sense.
Right. So my recommendation is always go with vitamin D3. Might vitamin D2 be perfectly fine? Maybe. But it doesn't naturally occur in our diets, doesn't naturally occur in our bodies, doesn't really naturally occur in our diets. So why don't we stick with what our bodies are naturally meant to run on? So I recommend vitamin D3. Okay. And those are so the easiest way is you flip over the bottle of supplements, you look, it'll say vitamin D. And you look if there's a 2 or a 3 after it.
Okay, and we want vitamin D3, everybody.
Right.
Okay, we're going to take a break. You're listening to eShell Wisdom Radio with Shauna Home on the I'm Thankful Network with Dr. Tim Gerstmar of AspireNaturalHealth.com.
And the sunlight hurts my eyes, and something without wanting love bears heavy on my mind.
If you are ready to change your life in a truly profound way, then I invite you to meet Elisa Silling, founder of Awake in Joy. Elisa is a gifted healing practitioner here in the Seattle area. She is a life coach, hypnotherapist, and spiritual guide. Elisa can induct you into your highest potential, helping you to overcome personal limitations, fears, anxiety, and stress. Working with Elisa, you will align with your life's purpose. Clients have experienced greater clarity and a sense of personal empowerment that has helped them create abundance on every level. Awake in Joy offers personal healing sessions, classes, and retreats. Sessions may be in person or by phone. Are you ready for a personal transformation? Check out Elisa's website, www.awakenjoy.com. My family has had cats for years, and every so often, the inevitable happens and one of them has an accident on the carpet. We all know how difficult it is to get rid of cat urine odors, but I have found the best product out there, Kids and Pets Stain and Odor Remover. Kids and Pets gets rid of urine odors permanently. It makes stains disappear and it even works on the mattress if your child wets the bed. And what I love about Kids and Pets is that it's made entirely of enzymes, which means it's safe and non-toxic, no harmful chemicals, and it's a cruelty-free product. You can use Kids and Pets on carpets, fabric car seats, furniture, and your clothing. In fact, I was able to remove blue food coloring from a cotton blazer I thought I'd never wear again. Kids and Pets removed it easily. I am so glad I found this product because I am very careful about not bringing toxic chemical cleaners into my home. So try Kids and Pets for yourself. You will be thrilled. And look for them on Facebook. Dr. Tim Gerstmar, ND, of Aspire Natural Health in downtown Redmond, is not your average naturopathic doctor. Dr. Gerstmar provides his patients with competent and compassionate health care, which emphasizes disease prevention and high-level wellness. Restoration of health and balance is the goal in Dr. Gerstmar's practice. Patients receive a level of personal attention at each appointment that is unheard of in today's medical practices. Initial appointments run for 90 minutes, enabling Dr. Gerstmar to treat the whole patient, body, mind, and spirit. Schooled in the knowledge of real food and its healing effects on the body, Dr. Gerstmar endeavors to discover the cause of what's ailing his patients and correct the imbalance, incorporating healing foods, in addition to blending traditional healing techniques along with the latest diagnostics and treatments of modern medicine. Check out his website, aspirenaturalhealth.com, or call for an appointment at 425-202-7849.
A lovely
Love this music. Thank you, Benny.
Quite welcome.
This is great. You are listening to Eashell Wisdom Radio with Shauna Home. And someone called earlier wanting more of my information. So the number to reach me, if you want to speak to me about any of these classes or any of the things that I offer or the healing work that I do, it's Shauna Home. The number is 206-409-1536, 409-1536. Or you can go on my website, which is www.shaunahome.com, SHONAGHHOME.com. And we are here today with my guest, Dr. Tim Gerstmar, talking about vitamin D. This is such a great show. And we have like maybe 9 minutes to cram in all this other stuff we want to talk about.
There's a lot of great information. So you'll forgive us if we talk fast, just trying to get through everything today and share this information with you. So D2 versus D3, last thing. So turn over the bottle, look for vitamin D3. The other piece, I'll post it on my Facebook page. You can look, vitamin D2 is also called Ergo, ERGO, calciferol. Vitamin D3 is called Chole, CHOLE, calciferol. So if you see Ergo on it, it's vitamin D2. If you see Chole, calciferol, you know it's vitamin D3.
Okay.
So some labels won't list it as clearly. Those are the things to look for.
Okay.
The other piece is vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin.
Right.
Right. So there are two types of vitamins, water-soluble, meaning they dissolve in water, or fat-soluble, meaning they dissolve in fat.
So
Meaning two things. Vitamin D should be taken with a meal that has fat in it. So if you eat a dry salad with no oil, no dressing, no nothing, and you pop your dry powdered vitamin D, you're going to absorb basically none of it. So I recommend that you get a vitamin D that's in an oil base. You don't absolutely have to, but since it's a fat-soluble vitamin, I recommend taking it in an oil base. So that would be gel caps if you're taking pills, or you can get them actually as an oil, and then you take drops, which is the form I most commonly use in my practice.
Right.
So I don't recommend, pills where you can look in and there's powders inside, or it's a stamped tablet. I recommend you either get a soft gel or an actual liquid vitamin D. And, there's Carlson sells it in health food stores, is a common brand that people can get a hold of.
And also Thorne, Thorne, that's the oil-based vitamin D.
Right. And that's the one I'm going to use in my practice. And we'll say why in just a minute.
Okay.
But regardless, if what you look in your cabinet and you've got the dry powders, the part of the cure for that is going to be taking it with fat. Okay. So, take it with your fish oil if you're taking your fish oil. Take it with, fat in your meal. So you want to be sure your meal has fat in
And
it.
this is why I'm so all about the traditional foods as
Right.
well, because of course the raw butter, the raw cream, the raw milk, and grass-fed beef, and all these meats that are pastured, that are raised properly and out in the sunshine, contain that D3 in their fat.
Right.
So you receive it in your food as well, which people just aren't doing.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's one of the issues, people say, well, I drink milk. Well, it's like, first of all, okay, to get the levels we're talking about, you'd have to drink like 50 glasses of milk a day.
Well, and yes.
And people are drinking 2%, 1% skim
Sure.
milk. It doesn't have the fat in it. And aside from everything else, I know Shauna could go on for days about,
I know. He's
you're
right.
not absorbing the vitamin D that's in it because there's not sufficient fat.
Right.
So you have to take your vitamin D with fat. So that's forms of vitamin D. So D3 in an oil base with a fatty meal
Right. Okay.
is how you take that.
Okay, cool.
So let's talk about sun.
Yes, please.
So we're kind of done with sun, sadly, as we all shed a tear, and we do look outside and we see a little bit of sunshine.
Yeah, but we got ripped off in the Pacific
But
Northwest
we
this year, let me tell you.
We sure did. So there's a myth going around that I need to dispel right now that 15 minutes exposing your hands and face is all you need to get all your vitamin D. You see that put out by I've seen dermatologists say it. I see it on websites. It's completely and totally wrong.
False.
That will make your 200 units of vitamin D that will prevent you from getting bone softening, but it's not going to give you the anti-cancer benefits, autoimmune benefits, and all the other benefits that we're actually looking at getting. So the best way, so we're kind of done now. People, if they want, can use tanning booths. So you need to be sure UVB. There's a couple different, UV means ultraviolet, and there's a few different wavelengths of ultraviolet. UVB is the type that stimulates the production of vitamin D. So if you do decide to go to a tanning salon and use the tanning beds, which is a perfectly acceptable way of getting vitamin D.
And you only need to go in for a few minutes. I mean, it's not.
Right. So you need to make sure the beds are producing sufficient UVB. Because if they're not, you can get a tan, but you're not making that vitamin D. So normally, when next spring rolls around, let's just say, and the sun starts coming out and people say, I want to get sunshine because it really is so good for you in so many ways. The proper way to calibrate it is you want to get you want to get just enough sunshine that your skin starts to turn the lightest pink color. So you absolutely, completely want to avoid sunburns. Let's talk about skin cancer. For simplicity's sake, there's melanomas, which are the very deadly, very dangerous type of skin cancer that kills people. And then there are non-melanomas called basal cell carcinomas, squamous cell carcinomas, non-melanoma skin cancers. They kill very, very, very few people. By and large, as cancers go, they are extraordinarily non-dangerous. They sit on your skin for generally a very long time before causing any problems, and they're very easy to remove. Any dermatologist can just cut them right out.
Okay.
So getting exposed. So there's been a big sun scare. Oh, you can't go. The sun causes cancer.
Oh, people are
Don't
hysterical.
Go
with
in the
kids.
sun, right? The sun causes non-melanoma skin cancers, and the data is really, really weak on melanomas, the very dangerous kind of skin cancers that often appear in areas where people don't get sun. So even if you go out in the sun, they often appear in the gluteal cleft between your butt cheeks. They appear, in under your armpit, in areas where people commonly are not getting sun exposure. And the data to support that the sun causes melanomas is very, very weak.
Okay.
So the sun does cause basal and squamous cell carcinomas, the non-melanomas that aren't that dangerous, and the data on causing the dangerous cancers is just not there.
Okay.
So sun exposure is a great way to get vitamin D, and the key again is not burning.
Right.
So burning is going to much more likely to lead to those non-melanoma skin cancers. So you want to get out in the sun, and you don't want to burn.
And you want to expose as much of your body as you
As
can.
much of your body as you can, right. Some people don't like to expose their face because they're worried about photo damage. That's not cancer, but just wrinkles and damage of...
I go in the sun a lot, a lot, and I'm 47.
Yeah.
And I don't use nasty skin, sunscreen.
Right.
I use pure coconut oil.
Right.
I mean, I get brown in the summer, and I get compliments on my skin all the time.
Right. So if you're concerned about it, you can cover your face, but, expose your back, expose your legs, expose your arms. If you have a private place, get out naked and get some sun exposure over your whole body. If you can't, wear a bathing suit, get some sun exposure, expose as much of your body as you can, and just don't burn. And you'll build up a tan as the summer goes along. You'll be able to tolerate more sun exposure. You cannot get toxic from sun exposure. So there is the concern, if you decide to take an entire bottle of vitamin D, you can potentially make yourself sick, but you can never get sick from sun exposure. So the sun makes vitamin D, and then after a while, it starts to break it down.
Okay, well, thank you so much again, Dr. Gerstmar. This is a great subject, and you have taught us so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, yeah, the bottom line, as quick as you can, take your vitamin D. It's simple, it's cheap, and it has tremendous health benefits. If people want more information, I'll be posting up some more on my Facebook page later today. Thank you for having me on, Shauna.
Thank you, Dr. Gerstmar. You can find Dr. Gerstmar on Facebook under Aspire Natural Health. You can also find him on his website, aspirenaturalhealth.com. Next Wednesday, I'm doing a solo show, and I'm going to be talking about shamanism, so I hope you'll tune into that. Have a great day, everyone. You're listening to eShell Wisdom Radio on the I'm Thankful Network.